Hello, Brother Sewing and Crafting family. I'm Angela Wolf. I am a brand ambassador and I'm so excited to be here. So welcome to the sewing party this week. We are live on Brother Sew's Facebook and YouTube page as far as the sewing and crafting side. So today, Emily Thompson is getting ready to join us and she has got some great tips for sewing with sweater knits, which we are probably a lot of us doing right now. In fact, we were joking because she just got snow and it's freezing here as well. How the tide turns. So I'm going to bring Emily up. If you've never been here before, say hi, say where you're from. This is such a fun group of people. We get together many times during the week. And if you don't know the schedule, stop into Brother Sews and you'll look on the event page and you'll see all the times that we're live and you can even save it so it pops up in your feed. All right. So you all can hear me? Hey, Phyllis, by the way, that top you made this week, I just saw it, is gorgeous. Your hack of the pattern. Absolutely gorgeous. Great job. All right, so let's not make Emily wait. I'm going to make sure she can come on in here. Hey, Emily.
Hi, everybody.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, like Angela said, we got a lot of snow already on Sunday. So it seems fitting that we should sew something cozy, whether it's fall or winter or wherever you are.
I know. I was actually up in northern Michigan this weekend, and I thought it said it was going to snow, and it didn't. And in fact, my mom, who's on the south side of Illinois, got snow. I'm like, this is so messed up.
Yeah, it's crazy, but good. Yeah, so it's cozy, and so today I'm going to be sewing a easy sweater out of sweater knit fabric and giving you some tips along the way for sewing with loose weave fabric like sweater knit.
Oh, this sounds like fun. Very exciting. Are you doing this for yourself or someone?
I am doing it for myself, yes. So we hopefully will be able to get a modeled view of it. When I'm finished, I will. I can try it on for you if it looks at all presentable when I'm done.
That's always the kicker. Well, it's live, so you just never know, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to get out of your way and let you start. Everybody's rolling in saying hi, and I will watch questions and I'll just bring them up to you while you're sewing.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay.
All right.
All right, so today I'm going to be sewing a sweater, actually using a drop shoulder t-shirt pattern, to which I've added some sleeves, and I'll give you the details about that as we go. But what I found especially helpful when sewing with sweater knits is that you find a pattern that, one, you like the fit of, and two, is a looser fit. So I'm not going for a fitted sweater here. I'm going for one that's definitely a little bit on the looser side. And so today I started with my Easy Breezy Summer Tee, which is a summer t-shirt that has a drop shoulder with a cuff on the end, but I didn't put the cuff. So instead of putting a cuff, I drafted, and the term drafted is very loosely used. I just cut a wedge of fabric that's going to become my sleeve, following the line, the curve that's left on the pattern piece, and then, you know, kind of measuring a shirt that I already had. So I plan to add cuffs on the end, and we'll talk about that. So I think the first thing, and actually I just did this, but this loose weave fabric, which you can see, I'm pretty excited about this, and hopefully it will turn out, but you can see through it, but it's also a really pretty ribbed sweater knit that I had several yards of, so that's what I'm going to use today. But my hands are really dry, hello winter, and every little crack or crinkle in my finger sticks to the fabric. So I just lotioned.
I hate that. Does that happen to you as well? I thought it was just me.
And then I also taped up this fingernail that is cracked because I sewed one thing and it was catching on everything. And I don't want snags on a sweater that doesn't even exist yet. So I'm okay. My finger's fine. I'm taping a nail and lotioning my hands, and it still won't be perfect for doing this.
Oh, so I so agree. So Emily, by the way, you for some reason, I don't know if it's the weather or what, but you keep freezing a little bit. So if it happens, I can hear you well, but every once in a while your photo goes out. So if that happens with people, just know that it's just refresh your page, not Emily, but she keeps coming back on. So it's not just you.
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea. Okay, so this was the pattern piece that I used, the front, and you can see how this was just the sleeve opening piece here. And, you know, your real shoulder is about halfway here. So this is definitely a drop shoulder style. And I just laid this on my fabric and kind of cut a sleeve piece from this angle downward. There'll be a fold here on the top. And I used an existing t-shirt that I already had to estimate the sleeve length. And when you're doing that, you'll line up the necklines because there's no shoulder to line up on the t-shirt. It had a real shoulder. So I just lined up the necklines, and that will give me the approximate length for this. So I'll come back later and drop the link to this pattern in the comments of this video if that's something that you're looking for. But you can also go to lifesosavory.com and look up Easy Breezy Summer Tee. But I have lots of posts about sewing for sweaters. So you could also just search sweaters, and that would give you patterns and inspiration and fabric and all of that information that I'm not going to give you all those details here. So that's, you can take what you want from there. So I've got my sleeves cut. And in fact, I was trying out just before I went live, putting a cuff on this sleeve, and that's when I was catching my hands and my fingernails. But so I've added the cuff already to this sleeve end, and I'll show you how to do the other one. So you have two sleeves. I have a sweater back. I have the extra cuff. I have a neckband, and I have the sweater front. Okay, so you can see how it's just a simple shape. So it has the neck, and then we have the shoulders, and it will hopefully all come together. So I've sewn this pattern many times just with knit, but not with sweater knit. So, you know, you never know it. I've never added full length sleeves to it. So that is the questionable thing here. So the sweater knit does make a mess. There's little pieces all over my cutting table here, but hopefully we can contain all of those and have a finished product when we're done. So I'm now going to take these pieces and move right over here to my sewing area, and we'll start putting this together.
That sounds great.
Okay, so some other things that are helpful when sewing with sweater knit that you might want to have, besides having different machines, it is possible to sew with it entirely on a, you know, traditional sewing machine, but definitely harder because of all of the little bits and pieces that will fray. So I always sew my sweaters using my serger, and it really does simplify the process. But if you're not, then you definitely would want to sew with a zigzag and probably over the seam a couple of times to reinforce, just because, especially with a looser weave, you are going to have trouble binding all of those fibers together. So you can see here is the cuff that I already sewed on, and I just went over it with my serger, and it really does bind those edges nicely, still retaining some stretch, and then on the right side giving you a really nice finished look. So ultimately, I would, you know, if you have a serger, use it. If you don't, then you're going to want to practice a few times going over and pulling on some seams and seeing what stitches, and maybe even a combination of stitches, are going to work best on your regular sewing machine. The other thing that I'm going to use and demonstrate today is by sewing some clear elastic into the seams. And adding this into your seams gives reinforcement, gives structure. If you're afraid that your seams are going to stretch out because of the fabric, this is a great way to stabilize them. And so I'm going to add this into the shoulder seams. I won't do it into every seam on the project, but I will definitely show you how it works sewing it into the shoulder seams. So we're going to begin by sewing one of the shoulder seams. Say that 10 times fast. And so I'm going to put the clear elastic onto my machine. So I love sewing it right in with my serger, and I do that by just feeding it right through this little hole in the top of my foot, the serger foot, and then pulling it around to the back. Now my hands are so slippery from the lotion, I can't pull the elastic.
Think of bittersweet.
Something. Can't win everything. So then and just leave it there. And then I'll take the front and the back of my sweater, and with right sides together, which this fabric, it's not super different. I think I can see a little bit of difference, so we'll say there's a right side. I'm going to line up one of the shoulder seams. Okay, so just a straight seam across here. So starting at the neckline edge and ending at the arm edge. And we're going to place it under our foot on our serger. And here's the clear elastic just threaded right through there. And the other thing is you want to make sure that you take a good, healthy seam allowance. And so plan for that when you're cutting and take note of what the seam allowance is on the pattern that you're using. I tend to sew with a narrow seam allowance in general, but for this one, I've made sure that I've allotted myself a good 3/8 inch, if not a little bit more than that, to make sure that I take any of those loose thread bits off and then have healthy fabric to cut into. So here's my clear elastic on top. As I sew, the clear elastic will be bound into the stitches of the serger. And if you pull on this, it will tighten and actually gather the fabric, but I just want it for stabilization. So I'm actually not going to tug on it. If I need to adjust it, I will, but generally I'm just going to leave it alone. And it will self-feed through that foot as I'm sewing. So we'll just begin going along and then line up everything again. And I can feel this pulling, but I'm not getting any tension. Okay, so you can see, yeah, right there. So there's the clear elastic sewn right into it, still nice and stretchy. And then if we flip it over to the right side, it's actually a nice stable seam. You can see there's no waving or stretching out in there, and that's partly due to having that elastic in there. So that is a great way to stabilize some seams when you're sewing with loose weave. I am going to cut it out for the neckband just because I'm afraid it will make that a little bit bulky around my neck. So we'll sew it out, the extra fabric or the extra elastic that was in there. And another thing that I always do is usually on t-shirts or things like that, I will go for a very narrow neckband. So, you know, even on this shirt, which is made out of waffle knit, it's, you know, a very narrow band around my neck for the binding. But with this fabric and chunkier fabric, you definitely want to go thicker. So this one is like 2.5 inches to start with. And then I will, with the stretch going the long way. And so when I fold it in half and after I sew it, I'll probably have close to a 1-inch neckband going around my neck. And that is not usually what I will choose to do, but I found that it works better when sewing with these chunkier sweater knits. If it's thinner and has a tighter weave, you might be able to get away with a more narrow band. But for a thicker one, you're definitely going to want to add that a little more width to it. So we'll start by lining it up on one of the shoulders. And again, using the serger to sew, I'm going to just gently tug it as I sew to stretch it along the neckline. And so I'm sewing 3 layers of fabric here, 1 layer of the main sweater fabric and 2 layers of the binding or the band. And you can definitely pin this first along the neckline if you want. And then we're coming over here to the other shoulder seam, the one that is already sewn closed. So we'll go off and trim a bit of elastic sticking off. Trim that as we come around to the back side. Again, I'm making sure that I am cutting off a bit of fabric because all the edges on this, even though I've tried not to play with it or move it around, are fraying. And so you want to make sure you cut off the frayed edge so that you're sewing the good part of the fabric into your seam. And if you ever feel like this is still not even strong enough, even with the double needle aspect of the serger, you could go back and reinforce it with stitches on your regular sewing machine to add even more strength to your seam if you feel like doing that. All right, so with any neckline, I like to open it up here and then double check that I've caught all those layers, because usually I'm looking at the wrong side. And so I want to make sure when I open it up that I didn't miss anything and have any holes. So that looks good. And actually the neckline looks like it's laying nice and flat and doesn't look like it's going to stand up, which is sometimes a problem when you make a wider neckband, is that it kind of wants to stand up on you. So
that looks really, that looks good. I'm going to stop you for one quick sec, Emily, because there's a couple questions here on the clear elastic, which are great questions. So Marcia,
yes, okay.
And you might do something different than I do, but Marcia wants to know, when you do the elastic, do you put it on, so where you have it layered on the front piece or the back pattern piece, or do you have a preference? So like when you're doing the shoulders.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I don't know if I've ever been aware of which side it's on, because usually I'm just using it in the shoulders, or generally I'm using it just in the shoulders, or like in a waist if I'm, you know, sewing a skirt to a shirt. Sometimes I'll use it to reinforce that waist gathering. But I've actually never thought about if I'm sewing it to the front or the back. I've just stacked my pattern whichever, or pieces in whichever side it happened to be on. I sewed it. So do you have a preference?
I prefer, only because a lot of times I'll be using a really thin fabric, and I prefer to have it where it stitches on the front piece, because then that automatically, that serged edge, when you serge with the front pattern piece on top and the bottom on the bottom, like obviously with the right sides together, when you serge, it just automatically has a little curl to the back. And so that clear elastic goes to the back. But you know what? I've seen in ready to wear on both sides. So I don't think there's a right or a wrong. It's just a preference.
Yes. I would say it's actually a really good thought, because I've never given that actually a lot of thought as to which side I was sewing it on. So obviously I've never been annoyed by which side it was on.
And then the other thing that someone had asked, are there other areas? So there's areas that you would use the clear elastic, and there's areas that you would not use the clear elastic. You would not use it along your side seam, because it would make the sweater hang weird. It just is to stabilize. Just think of twill tape or something, fusible interfacing, any of those things. They do the same thing. They stabilize so it doesn't stretch out. I even put this sweater behind me while you were doing that. I did this for It So Easy a while back. And this sweater knit, you'll laugh. So I sewed the shoulders and I sewed in the sleeves, and the sleeves were like, the armholes were like down to here. The whole thing just grew. So that's another place you have to use clear elastic to stabilize it. So so definitely.
When I sew the arms to the top, I will also put the clear elastic in, but those will probably be the only two places on this particular sweater that I will use it, is on the shoulders and then to sew the arms in. And these, because of the cut of this and the drop shoulders, you can see we don't have a traditional armhole. It will be more of just a straight line sewing the arms on, but I still will add it in there, because just like you said, you don't want it to really sag down. So I think those two places. And then, if you're sewing and you find others, like I said, I've used it to attach a knit skirt to a knit top, like a t-shirt style dress that might have a gathered. If I feel like that's really gonna pull down on the skirt, I'll reinforce with the clear elastic there, especially if I'm sewing for my kids. Yeah,
well, because otherwise you keep sewing and it ends up being this big. Well, I mean, I guess it could be a Halloween costume, but not for.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're going to sew the. Okay, you're good. Okay, we're going to sew the other shoulder seam, and so before I do that, I'm going to thread my clear elastic back into the foot. So again, I raise the presser foot just to give myself a little bit more room. Stick the elastic through that hole that's already in your foot. And I know some sergers have more of a oval hole or a square or rectangle. This one is a bit of an oval, so it does pinch the elastic a bit when it's going through, but I haven't had any trouble with the elastic actually being pinched in the seam. I also pulled this out to show you. This is really narrow clear elastic. So you might end up with something like this. This is probably 1/8 inch. It's really fine. And then this is 1/4 inch. And the only thing you want to make sure is sometimes when I've bought it, it says clear elastic and it will say like for bra straps. And it is so thick that it's way too heavy for reinforcing seams. It would actually be if you wanted to gather something with elastic. So make sure your clear elastic, this is pretty thin and not super strong, but that's all that we need in the seams. So there are different kinds of clear elastics, just to note that, and I have ordered the wrong kind before when I was buying online, not in a store. Okay, so for the second shoulder seam, we have our clear elastic lined up. Now I have the 2 sides of the neckband, which were on either side of the neckline. And because I sewed it while it was still open, you could also, sew both shoulder seams and then go ahead and put that neckband in the round, whatever you prefer. But we're going to take this and sew down this other shoulder seam to finish that neckline. And then we'll still leave our clear elastic in there to sew on the arms, and then we'll be able to take it out. Okay, so now we have, here's the neck, and you can see that this is a little bit troublesome. And normally, when I'm sewing the neckband together like that on the shoulder seam, I just have this loose little serger piece and I easily thread it back through. But now we have some clear elastic in here, which is going to make it bulkier. So what I'm going to try and do is with my scissors, get in here and snip the elastic. Although if it's sewed into any of the stitches, it won't pull out as easily as I want it to. But I want to get rid of this tail so that I can actually thread this back through to finish this, because we can't just leave this. And this is, of course, what the trade-off you have when you sew your neck line in an open way rather than in a full circle, is you have to deal with sort of this extra seam here. So I prefer to do it. I think it's well worth the extra little step that it takes, but I know some people definitely prefer to sew it in a round. So up to you. And then I'm just going to go ahead and thread that serger seam right back through, pull it through, and then there it is. So it actually finishes really nicely, and I don't mind having that extra seam here. So let's see, did we sew our elastic to the front or the back?
I think that was the earlier question from before.
Yeah. So it looks like on this one, it's on the back side, and on this one, it's on the front side because of how I was holding the fabric. So when I put this on, I'll notice and see if it really does seem to, feel differently on there. But yeah, like Angela said, it is looking like it's folding a little bit to the back, which is nice. You'd rather have that seam sort of pull to the back than to the front.
And the way you do that with the seam in the shoulder, that is such a right. I mean, you could see that in all ready to wear. That's not like something. I saw somebody ask it. I've never seen that before. It's such an easy way to sew it too. I mean, for sportswear, you always have like a little seam, especially for tank tops. In fact, I'm wearing a ready to wear shirt right now. Believe it or not, I'm not wearing a top that I own, and I'm just feeling. And guess what? I have a seam right there.
So it's definitely common on traditional sewing patterns that, from sewing companies, they don't ever give the instructions like that. So I think it is a bit of a shift, but on a lot of more modern PDF patterns that I've been using, or all the ones that I've created, that's how I write the instructions, but you can always sew it the more traditional way if that is more comfortable for you. But I find getting the neckline done correctly is easier when I don't sew that second shoulder seam.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so
it looks
now,
good too.
yeah. So here's the neck, and here is the shoulder opening from here to here. And so with right sides together, I'm going to first sew the one that I already did the cuff on, and then I will sew the other one with that still needs the cuff. So I'm going to match this up in just a couple of places along here to make sure that it is the right width. Again, the sleeve is a pattern piece that I sort of created by just making a wedge shape off of the shirt pattern, because again, this is a short sleeve shirt. So I just thought, oh, I like the fit of the body. It's a loose, I like the shoulders, and I thought it would make a good sweater if I was able to create a sleeve that would work. But I'm not looking for a super fit. I'm just looking for a sort of basic sweater shape. So we'll see how that turned out. So now here's the pins. And again, I've still left my clear elastic in here. We're going to put that onto that shoulder seam for our final location. And so lift the foot a little bit, grab my pin container, and we'll sew sleeve number 1 in place. And if you ever were sewing and you wanted it to be a little bit gathered, all you have to do is with your right hand, pull on this clear elastic a little bit, and it will add sort of a natural small gather to your seam. But I'm just hoping this will lay flat right now. So no pulling, trying to keep the tension level and keep all the fabric going in the right direction. All right, so there.
Sewing, I could see some. Lynn says, "Lovely fabric." I totally agree. It's gorgeous. And Jenny, welcome to the party.
Yay! Okay, so that looks like it's going to. I'm hoping it's not a little bit too stiff, but I think it will lay okay when we have the shoulder. So you can see there's the shoulder seam, and then here's the arm seam that I just sewed on there. And hopefully it lays nicely when I put it on. But yeah, so there's the start. You can see we have one side with the seam, and actually this one already has the cuff on it. And I will sew the other arm on before I do the cuff, because I don't want to put this clear elastic in my cuff. So we'll do the final piece that we want to keep the clear elastic on for, and then I will take that off and we'll move on with the other cuff and then hemming it. So, and then that will be another kind of point to talk about, how do you hem this sort of loose fabric? And just like I did with the sleeves, I think that honestly the easiest thing is to just add a bottom, you wouldn't call it a cuff on the bottom of your sweater, but a bottom band, and not hem at all. So especially if you were trying to sew this with your sewing machine, I would recommend just cutting your pattern a little bit shorter and then adding a fold over band along that bottom of your shirt. That will definitely be the easiest way to finish it. That's why I'm doing it with the sleeves, honestly. So I don't have to hem them. But also, I will be showing how to hem on the cover stitch, which also is a good way to finish this sort of fabric. So we have a couple of options here for you. And all right, let's sew this arm in with the elastic.
Tyler, I see your question there. When she's talking about clear elastic, you could use something else if you're allergic to elastic. I saw some, I think, I saw somebody meant, oh, Connie, I saw that. So you could use twill tape. I use twill tape sometimes to stabilize the shoulders. And I also saw on here that Wendy was asking, so you're going to do this on seams that get the most stress. Not necessarily. You're just stabilizing a seam. So where are the seams that you don't want to stretch out? That'd be your shoulders. sometimes the neckline, your armholes. These are places that you're just trying to keep in shape. So just think of like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something creative. And so, because most of the stress would be on your inseams would have the most stress, and you don't want to stabilize those usually, because what will happen is it won't have the natural drape of the fabric. So I hope that helps. But Talia, yes, you're right. Twill tape, you could use a piece of, sometimes I'll use a piece of salvage if I'm trying to stabilize, but twill tape, cotton twill tape is a great other source. So, oh, Emily, that looks great.
Yeah, so I'm thinking this is coming together well here. And the other thing that I am thinking is when I sew the side seams, I think I'm going to make the sleeve a little bit more narrow than I originally cut it, because if I put my arm into this cuff and I actually want it somewhat fitted, it is too big. So I think I'll just trim it either with scissors, or I'll just trim it with the serger. When I am sewing down here, we'll just change the angle slightly. So I think it's looking good though. And I've removed the clear elastic from the sewing machine. And now I want to make sure I'm working on the right side of the end of this sleeve. And I'll take my other cuff and fold it with in half with the right side of the fabric out. And I'm going to place it on the edge of the sleeve, and I've cut the cuff about 2 inches shorter than the fabric. So you can see over here. And so I need to stretch the cuff as I sew to make it the same width. And then that will also help the cuff to bring in the sleeve a little bit. I think I might have to do it even a little bit more. But again, these are sleeve pieces that I didn't cut from the pattern. So it's a little bit of guesswork. So just stretching this cuff, not stretching the sweater. And sewing the 3 layers together.
While she's sewing that, I saw somebody say they wanted a close-up look of the elastic. So I grabbed some of my clear elastic to help out.
Yeah.
So this is what it is. It's super thin, see-through. It's going to be very difficult to see here. I actually have this in another color as well, but can you see that? That's what she's adding in there. So it has a light stretch. You could also use it for ruching, but if you don't stretch it when you sew it in, it stays in place. So that's what she's talking about. It's like invisible.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so now we are going to sew up the side seams. So we'll turn this with the right sides in. And I want the sleeve to be looser, on the looser side, because the whole fit of the sweater is definitely on the looser side. But I think I am going to start sewing about 1 inch in here just to make my cuff a little bit tighter, and then I will angle right back out to sort of the original line of the sleeve. Probably, take that chunk off and then end up here. So I still have a looser fit sleeve, because the sweater is a looser fit. So I don't want tight sleeves on a loose fit sweater. And again, I've sewed my cuff on already with an open sleeve. So I will have that serger seam here that I will need to finish afterwards. But that's just my preference, because I would rather sew and stretch the cuff on a flat line than on a circle. And I could have taken this and trimmed the fabric, because I guess it's not always ideal to be using my serger to trim all this off. But I think it's okay. So as you're going down, you want to make sure that that underarm, where we sewed the arm to the body, that seam is matched up. You could also, I think, make really pretty sweaters if you had a t-shirt pattern that you loved and just sized up 1 or 2 sizes for a looser fit. I think that's also a great way to use patterns maybe that you already have. And I saw someone even mention to add clear elastic to an old sweater that they have that's really stretched out, and maybe to be able to redo that by adding clear elastic into the seams. All right, so this side seam is a tiny bit wavy. You can see that it's stretched, but I will press the seams when I'm finished and wash it and throw it in the dryer because this is washable fabric, and that will eliminate a lot of this waviness, but you can totally see the difference between a seam stabilized with the clear elastic and the seam that is not. But again, this will work out well in the end. But you can see that there is a difference. So before we do the other side, I'm just going to take my little darning needle here and pull this thread in on that edge of the cuff to finish this side of the sweater. Okay, so now we'll do the same thing with the other side. Again, I'm going to trim about an inch in, start about an inch in to make that cuff a little bit smaller and a little bit tighter around my wrist. And then ease it back out to the original sweater.
This is Mary asking, what machine is that standalone by itself? That is the, what's the number that you're using? Do you have the double cover stitch or just the cover stitch?
So I do have the double cover stitch. This is the serger, the 3734, and the cover stitch is the 3550.
Thank you. Well, Mary, there are machines, this is from Brother, and there is a double cover stitch or just a cover stitch that stands alone. It's kind of nice because you can go from one machine to the other and always leave it. And I'll check that for you, Marcia, when she's finished about the. Marcia wants to know, is it differential? You adjusted it all for this thick sweater?
You know what? I didn't. So really, I want the loopers to be pretty tight because I want them to bind in those loose fibers really well. And the threads still seem stretchy enough, but yet tight enough that they don't stay on this side. So I actually didn't do any adjustments.
Yeah.
Oh, so
okay.
she's the differential feed. So the differential feed is on normal. I suppose I could maybe tighten it up slightly to help with this waving on this comment. But I think with a wash or a press, it would be just fine. Okay, so we are almost to the final step, which is to hem it. And like I said, the easiest option is definitely just add a bottom band. Don't even bother about hemming it. Just cut yourself a couple inch wide piece of fabric that you can fold over and sew to the bottom. And that is definitely the easiest. And I was actually thinking about this earlier, and I thought if I don't love the way the hem turns out, I can always cut it off and just add a band. So I'm leaving that option open.
That sounds good. I'm reading just a few more questions and comments. So if you missed the beginning, you can always, when we're finished live, you can go back and watch this from the beginning, save it to your page. We're on Brother Sews and Crafting YouTube and Facebook page. Oh my gosh, that looks fantastic.
So I'm so cute. I'm excited for this sweater. Okay, so you can see the bottom, it's raw. The back is slightly, just a little bit longer than the front. Okay, maybe an inch, inch and a half. And we are going to now, okay, so can you see all this on the table? It is definitely not mess free, but we can clean it up when we're finished.
Fuzzy.
Better than like faux fur or something though, for sure.
Oh, yeah. That would be worse.
So on my cover stitch, I have a dark stretch thread for the looper. And then I have two dark color threads. I actually only have one navy because that's all I could find. So I have a navy and a black. I don't think you'll be able to see it at all because there's both colors in here. And I have it with the 3 needles, the 2 widest needles. So we're going to have a wide double needle hem. And I always like to start on one of the side seams. And I am going to fold over about an inch just because this fabric is so thick. I think a slightly thicker hem will work better. And so we're going to fold over 1 inch and we're going to stitch in there, find the right presser foot. And one of the advantages of the cover stitch with sewing all fabrics is that it not only hems it, but it also finishes, we've got a stuck thread here. It also finishes that raw edge of the fabric. And I'll show you in a minute, but so it will really help to reduce any fraying that's going to come out of that raw bottom edge. And you can see I did not pin up my hem. I'm just pulling up the inch and adjusting as I'm sewing. But you could definitely pin that whole thing up and then sew all the way around there. So with the cover stitch, you do sew on the right side of the fabric, so you can use the thread guides that are on the foot. Also, I can usually use my fingers to feel where the folded fabric is and then make sure I'm sewing on the edge of that. And there's also an 1-millimeter guide here on the side to keep your hem going the same width. And then sometimes my cover stitch likes to give me a little bit of trouble when I go over the side seam here. So I will often make sure I have my back hand ready to kind of pull just a little bit to help over that side seam. And that's just kind of one of the things that I learned as I'm using this machine that's helpful. So I did test the settings on this machine last night on some scraps of this fabric to make sure that this would, doesn't always still work, but that it would work as well as I could hope for on sewing this hem. All right, so I'm back around, overlap a little bit, raise the presser foot, pull out those threads a little bit.
Hey, Emily, are you sewing, do you have the front side of the garment on the front or the back side? Or it didn't matter because you switched it around?
Am I sewing what? Can you say that again?
Yeah, Sharon wants to know when you were sewing, do you have the front side of the garment on the top or the back side on top, or do you just switch it around when you swap sides?
In general or on this hem?
On the top you're doing now.
Oh, yes. So for the hem, I was sewing with the right side up so that the looper is on the back.
Gotcha.
Is that what she was asking?
Yeah. And that's what I was going to just answer for you, but I was making sure there wasn't some other, but by the way, that's a great question because if you're using a cover stitch machine that doesn't have the double cover stitch and you want it to look decorative on the front like sportswear, you can actually flip the fabric over and hem it the other way. So that was a good question. Yes,
it can be done the other way, but on this case, I wanted the looper, which can you see there's the black thread of the looper on the back side. And then here's the front side, which the hem is virtually invisible on there. So, okay, so let's hold this up here. Oh.
There we go. Yeah. Hold on. I think you're back now. There you are.
Okay. So here's my sweater.
That's cute.
Looking good. So I will just step here to the side. Sorry, my camera's a little crooked. I'm going to step here to the side and put this on for you. So Angela can entertain you for a moment while I try this on.
That sounds good. All right, so I'm just going to move this over just a smidge. You got a hot one too while you're at it. Somebody's calling you to tell you how fabulous that sweater looks. So I know, isn't that awesome? So while she's throwing that on, that is such a cute idea. And plus, I saw some of you saying, hey, we can't have sweaters like that down in the South. You know what? When I go to Florida, it gets chilly in the evening. And I'm always cold anyways, but I always have a big baggy sweater that I'm wearing. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's see. I think we got her back here.
Ta-da! So,
where are you? It's bringing you in. It's just the internet is not being friendly today. So hold on 1 second.
Sorry.
Come back.
Okay. Is it working?
Nope, not yet.
No? It's showing fine on my
There
side.
you are. There you are. Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. Yay. All right. So here's the finished result. And of course, you can change the length. I mean, that's easy to adjust, how long you want it. So, you know, you can see this is a little bit on the longer side, but not crazy long. And I usually do like to tuck up a little bit of the front, but the sleeves ended up to be a good length. And actually the cuffs are pretty tight, so it's not gonna fall over my hands, which is exactly what I wanted. But you can see here how it all lays pretty nicely, all things considered, with the fabric and having the seams, and even the neckline that I didn't reinforce with the clear elastic is laying really nice along there. So I think the wide band is really helpful. If you feel like with the neckline that a wider band is going to be a strange look, you can always trim your neckline back a little bit more before you sew it to account for that. So there we go.
That is so cute, Emily. I love it.
All finished.
I think we're, for some reason, can you hear me, Emily?
I can hear you just fine, yes.
It's so weird. The whole computer froze.
Oh.
So you're there.
Okay.
There we are. It's got to be the mojo. It's got to be the weather mojo. Anyways, that top is so cute. Absolutely adorable. Oh, I clicked on Phyllis's comment like 10 minutes ago. I think it's just gremlins in the internet today.
Staying up there.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I will go ahead and put the link to the actual pattern that I did use in the description if anyone's wondering this one. Or again, go to lifesewsavory.com and just search sweaters, because I've written several posts about sewing sweaters and lots of different patterns that make great sweaters, even if they're not actually originally a sweater pattern. So
awesome. And I see some of you asking about fabrics and stuff. Just message Emily, and I'll put up her, you can see our Instagrams are up above, or did I take those down? Let's see if I can get those back up. Here's her website down below. That's both of our websites and Brother Sews. Don't forget, blog.brothersews has some great new projects on there too if you're looking for some free projects. But you can message Emily about that. That's fabric wouldn't be a brother product, so that'd be helpful there. And just checking to see what other questions I think I saw. I don't know where it went. Oh well. It's not coming up. But anyways, go to her website and then you can find all of those links too.
Yay. Yes. Yeah. So message me if you have any questions, or find my Facebook page. But there's lots of options to get a hold of me and ask questions if you need.
Yes. Perfect. So those of you that are wondering the schedule for the week, Cindy will not be live today. I forgot that she had other plans today.
I don't know if you guys can still see me, but I feel like something just happened and Angela's gone. So maybe I'm here. Oh, she's coming back.
Are you back, Emily?
I'm back.
I think you were gone. I think it's mine.
So there might have been quiet there for a few minutes because I was like, am I on or are you on? I'm not sure what's going on. All right.
I have no idea. It's just, it's just the internet gremlins. So that was such a great project though. Karen, I have no idea what happened there. And it could be my end because I saw that my software said there's a difficulty with Facebook today. So that's, what do you do, right?
What it is.
So Emily, thank you so much. And don't forget, you can go back and see her. You can watch this over if you'd like to. And also what I was going to say is Cindy does not have her live show today. She is traveling. So tomorrow I have my live show at 1:30 and right after is Emily's show. Tomorrow is Wednesday, right? So assuming that internet works tomorrow, that's what happens. And then on Thursday at noon, we have 2 more Brother Brand Ambassadors coming in to show you some more cool things about some of the great machines we've got going on. So Emily, thanks so much. Brother, thanks for having us on. This was
Thanks for having us.
I see some few people. There must be a delay because I see people asking for the schedule. Tomorrow, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for me. The Linda Sew Along tunic is what we're doing. Emily, what are you doing tomorrow on your show?
I'm finishing a little vest that I started last week. So it's like a kid's vest that has lots of pockets that they could wear for exploring outside or even playing inside. I call it a little explorer vest, but you could use it for multiple things, Nerf wars or whatever. So I started it last week and we're finishing it this week.
Awesome. And yes, it's Eastern Standard Time. Yep. So, and yours is on at 3 or 3:30?
3, yep.
3 o'clock, 1:30 and 3. And then on Thursday is noon Eastern Time is when we have a couple of brother educators coming on. I'm looking very excited to 2 new girls you haven't seen on here yet. So this will be a lot of fun. So that is the schedule for the week. And Emily, that was awesome. You guys can message her. And thanks again for watching. And sorry if the internet's acting weird today. So looks like it's on my end.
I don't know. Thanks. Bye.
Bye, Emily. Thanks so much.